Alrighty, poggers and poggerlets. Laser smiley face is now done. There's not much blue you need to touch, but there's a lot of math going on that I spent 2 weeks doing. So the main three things you're going to touch for the laser itself is the laser lens diameter, the wavelength of the laser, and the beam power. These all create, the conditions for your laser to work. Um, I don't know if I'm going to add anything else other than these three, uh, because of how the math works at the moment. I don't really need any others, but who knows? Maybe I'll add extra stuff in the future. After you do the laser stats, you start doing the laser testing, which is really important because lasers, unlike railguns, have really specific, like, context, I guess, for their effectiveness. Like, the closer it is, it just gets fucking nuts. Like, it'll pierce a target in like less than a millisecond. But 4 million meters, yeah, is the starting distance base. That's just the one I did because Atomic Rocket had theirs at 4 megameters. And then I've done distance intervals as 50,000 meters. You can change these all you want, like 75,000. Yeah. And then it changes everything in here. It's pretty cool. So, after you get that, obviously, the little table, range table that tells you what the laser's like. You've got the beam diameter, not a super important one, but it's important for math. Then you've got the area and the intensity. These are the most important stats for the laser. It basically tells you what area it's going to affect and how much power is going to be shoved into that specific area. I realize I forgot to do this. 2 seconds. One, two. Let's go. Alrighty. Oh. And these ones. I didn't realize that. My bad. Oh my god, I did it again. Why? Is that it? Done? Cool. Alright. Yeah, so the area intensity is like, how much is it going to penetrate and how strong it is. Now we get to this bit. This was the very difficult bit that ended up taking me a week and a half. So a laser is affected by a lot, like, dependent on the material that you're using. Like, apart from vaporization and boiling temperature, literally everything of this is being used. And the main things you can change here are the material, which I'm going to add drop down menus. When I have the armor creator, you will be able to just select it. I'm probably going to have it similar to the engine where it's going to have an index match, so all the stats are there and it can just get plugged into any like of these material thickness things in the sheet. But you've got like density, heat capacity, thermal conductivity, blah blah blah. The only ones that are affected by the thickness are the volume and the mass. Right. Now, over here is all the fancy number stuff. So this blue box here is actually affected by what you put in here. So if I was to change this to 1,000, it now goes 1,000 in here. It's cool. Yeah, you do have to like change each time. So you don't really need to worry about any of these numbers, to be honest. I've included them because they're cool to look at. The only one you need to worry about is down here. So this is the only part of the lasers that I can't really change at all. So if I was to go this, so you can see that the total time to penetrate is 1.782 seconds, but the laser pulse duration is only 1.44. So what you need to do is try and match it as best you can to one decimal place, 1.8. Oh, perfect, cool. So now the laser pulse duration needed to pierce 11 centimeter thick structural steel is 1.8 seconds. This is extremely difficult when you're dealing with lasers that that are very unfocused. So if I do a lens diameter of 2, you can see it like it jumps up to like 180,000. So if I do, oh sorry, 1,800,000. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. You can see how annoying this would get. So using unfocused like lasers is not a great idea. If you have a highly focused laser though, 50 meters, you can see the time drops to like 0.4 seconds. 0.6. So obviously you can see here that this one is even more difficult. 0.00. Cool. Okay, so it'll take 0.006 seconds to yes, 11 centimeters of structural steel. So that is pretty much lasers, to be honest. You can change whatever you want in here. So if you wanted to do ultraviolet C, then it's even more nuts. Like that number will be very difficult to get. But if you do like ultraviolet C, you only need like a. So if 20 meters was the other one, this one's basically 2 meters, and then you can penetrate it in 1.47 seconds, pretty much. Oh. Oh. So you can see how changing the wavelength drastically changes how the laser works. So basically, the lens creates your penetration area, and then the wavelength lowers the lens diameter needed for the same penetration area and intensity, and then the beam power is basically what you want to chuck into the laser to penetrate. I don't know how balanced this will be, because this is like a very real, somewhat realistic look at how lasers work in comparison to railguns, where I've done all the math, but again, I don't really know how balanced it would be. Because lasers, they work out very well to these distances, like you can tell. And structural steel is super dense, like it's got pretty good heat capacity with metals. Thermal conductivity is okay, but its melting temperature is pretty low. So the material you're going to hit is super important. Like if you've got a material that has like amazing heat capacity, you might never really penetrate it at long distances. But you never know, because I actually haven't really messed around with this too much. Doing all this math here with this stuff was a nightmare, because you've got like numbers and letters, and some of them don't even have proper units. The one I had the most trouble with was temperature, because it doesn't. You've got to find out what temperature you want to put it to. So I had like a eureka moment or whatever. I'm like, why don't I just make the temperature the melting temperature? And that's how I was able to get all the math working, was just, if I just make it the melting temperature, it'll probably work. And it did. I don't have any vaporization stuff done, because that's that's like all of this death. And eventually you need to start doing like quadratic like graphs and stuff like that. At some point it does mention it. I think it's yeah, a quadratic equation that can be solved analytically. I didn't even touch it at that point. I just gave up. Because I got to the melt ejection, I figured it out, and I'm like, cool. This melt ejection formula is where most of these numbers come from. Because I had to do, you know, LNs and really weird, you know, sums and all that use multiple parts of this. But yeah. I'm glad lasers work. That was extremely difficult. Probably the hardest thing I've done yet, but I'm sure there'll be more difficult things to come into the future, like this, but for armor, because this is what I'm going to use for armor, because lasers need it to work. I can't skimp out on having only density or whatever for armor. So yeah, lasers, everyone. I'm looking forward to doing missiles. They're gonna be much easier. But yeah, see you next video, guys. PogChamp.